This is Capital Games. I am the Wiz. I want to thank everybody for being very accepting and being very supportive of the fact that I wasn't here from Tuesday to Friday on both channels and on both podcasts. I had some personal things happen throughout the week, and it took my time away from the podcast. I'm back now. I can't guarantee that I won't have to step back at some point. For right now, I think I'm good to go, for the time being at least. So I wanted to, when I put up a note on YouTube that I wanted to do a roundup of what happened last week for Monday. But after seeing some of the stories that happened on Monday and that some big games and stuff is going to happen this week, I thought it'd be a better idea if I just give a roundup of what I think were the top stories from the past week, and then I can just move on from there and go into the week that goes from the following week. I am still doing the reviews of Arrival and Field of Dreams on the movie channel, so with Zero and Kim. So look forward to those as well. Again, I apologize that I had to step away and I wasn't able to do the podcast, but thank you again for your support and thank you for your understanding on that. So let's just get started with what happened last week. And last week was the 16th to the 22nd of April 2023. And I want to start off by talking about, I think, the big game that was going to come out last week, which was this past Friday. I talked about what I thought the sales projections were going to be for Disney Speedstorm. And the only reason why I did Speedstorm first is because I was going to get to this game on Wednesday and to give my thoughts on what I think the sales projections were going to be. But since I had my issue, it was best that I would do it now, I guess. And I'm going to do a truncated version of what I usually do. And that's, of course, the game that came out Friday, which is Dead Island 2, the sequel to Dead Island, from 2013. Wow, it took 10 years for that to get made, too. That's crazy. Dead Island 2 was announced, I think, 3 years later, and then they just had numerous delays. And it also got to a point, too, where Techland was the first company that actually did Dead Island 1. Techland decided to go on to Dying Light, and Dying Light just had its second Dying Light game, last year? I think last year, yeah. Dead Island is kind of a forgotten brand at this point. But let's just get into the nuts and bolts real quick of it, okay? Dying Light, as of right now, on OpenCritic, has a 75 OpenCritic, which is considered strong. Only 56% of critics recommend it, however, and the overall consensus is that fans will enjoy it, but it doesn't really change the formula all that much when it comes to Dead Island. It is kind of a stupid, kind of like destroy zombies in your wake kind of game with some crafting in it. So if you really like Dead Island 1 from 10 years ago and you're really itching for a new one, I think that's what you're getting on this one. I went ahead and looked at the sales numbers from the original Dead Island. And I have to note on this one, this is going to be a little more difficult to actually project. Dead Island's most recent numbers is from 2013. And that's when the entire brand, that's including Dead Island Riptide, and Dead Island Retro Rampage. And I think there were others that came out too for the Dead Island name that were spinoffs. Those games sold 5 million as of 2013 together as a brand. So to me, that sounds like the first Dead Island probably got around 3? Probably 4. No, 3, because Riptide did do decently, even though it wasn't really that well loved. I would say that the first Dead Island did probably around 3, maybe 1.25 for Dead Island Riptide, and then the rest, the ancillary ones, probably got around the 750,000 mark. And that number's probably a little bit more now, because, deep sales on the PlayStation and Xbox and Steam, people buy those units and everything. Yeah, it's possibly more than that on that, but I would say 5 million is a good barometer to go on. So this is a game that had a decent fan base, but to be quite fair, well, quite honest, I should say, the game hasn't had any new fans since. And since it's been delayed numerous times, and I think they've had to also change studios and do all sorts of different things, the fact that Dead Island 2 is out now I mean, it's great that it's out now for the people who made it, but I'm not sure what the fan base is anymore for this game, especially since Dead Island 2. It's strange, really. It's funny to see a game get its sequel for the first time, and it's essentially a throwback to the first game. I mean, that's kind of weird, isn't it? And Dead Island 1 wasn't a bomb. It actually was pretty good. It actually did pretty good in sales. It is kind of weird to look back at this and see that Dead Island 2, the eventual sequel to Dead Island 1, is going to be a throwback to Dead Island 1. And with the critics basically saying, yeah, it's fun, but it's the same game, essentially. So if you really want to play that game again, go ahead and buy it. I don't think it's going to get strong sales. I am sensing a bomb on this one, really. I mean, $5 million for the entire brand at this point. I'm betting it's a little bit more, but $5 million. Year end? Okay, you know what? I'm going to go out on a limb, and if I get this wrong, I'll get it wrong. I don't think it hits $1 million at the end of the year. I don't think it's going to, unless the price drops precipitously, I don't think it's going to get $1 million. At most, I will go $600,000 for Dead Island 2. I do not think it's going to get that big of a thing, especially since the game itself has not updated really. It's updated graphically, I should say, but the gameplay systems seem to not have anything new to them that critics have been saying, I should say, on that one. But look at the brand that basically usurped it, which is Dying Light, which is also a melee-based game, but had a twist to it with parkour, and it's a little more serious, stuff like that. Dying Light is worth $30 million right now. The entirety of its brand is $30 million. The first one got $20 million. And they did a lot of good things for the first one. They not only kept pumping DLC into it, they kept updating it, which got more people to want to play it, and it did very good. And it seems like 2 is doing the same thing. They're still pumping out DLC for that game, but that's gotten $10 million as of right now. It may not reach the first one, but it's already gotten more than the entirety of the Dead Island games in total. I look at Dead Island 2 as a weird throwback, even though it's supposed to be the sequel that's supposed to make the game bigger and better for a newer generation of gamers at this point. I mean, Dead Island 1 was from the 360 era. Am I right on that? Yeah. 360 PS3. Like, that's already 2 console generations. So it is now its sequel that some people have been waiting for, is essentially a throwback to the last one. And I think that's going to disappoint a lot of people. So unless they drop the price sharply in the next couple months, I think the max it will get at the end of the year is $600,000. So yeah, Deep Silver is hoping this will be a big deal, which they're putting the marketing out, thinking that it might be. I don't think they're going to get that. I think they're going to be pretty disappointed by the numbers when it comes to Dead Island 2. So I'm expecting $600K. Maybe by the end of next year, it'll get $1 million. But I think this will probably not be a success, or as successful as I think. I think it's going to bomb. I think it's not going to do well. You will see that game probably in discount bins by the beginning of the summer. I would say expect it $30, $40 by June, maybe July. I think, at least. I would like to be wrong, but I don't see it getting that big. So, and it also doesn't look like Dead Island 2 is going to have DLC or anything like that. It's not a live service games, which, again, cool and all. I like the fact that it's not a live service game, but unfortunately, that also means that there's nothing to come back to. So if you're like, it looks good, whatever, I remember Dead Island 1, that's cool, you're going to wait. And you're going to wait for the price to drop. And I think in about a few months, it will drop. So $600K is probably the highest I will go when it comes to sales to the end of the year. Okay, next story. Sega acquires Rovio for nearly $800 million and bought it at a 20% premium. Now, if you don't know who Rovio is the brand that controls the Angry Birds IP, which basically is the mobile game, and it's had console versions too, where you shoot the bird and you try to beat the pigs and everything. It is a successful game. Like, I'm kind of lowballing it a little here. The number I have right here is that Sega bought Rovio at an estimated $776 million. That being said, Rovio in about 6 years ago was evaluated at $1 billion. So Rovio was a distressed brand and a distressed company that wasn't living up to the evaluation that it had about over 5 years ago. Why Sega decided to buy their shares at a 20% premium? I have a question about that. On that, it might not be that bad of an idea, but I've also looked at the numbers when it comes to Angry Birds, when it came to the amount of revenue they've made. Since 2021, they've made $600 million in revenue, which, that's great, but you're now taking the games and the property that has made all the money they could with Rovio, and you bought it at a 20% premium, which I don't necessarily get. Now, Rovio also has a bunch of brand partnerships as well, so they might be catering to that as well, and they might want to milk Angry Birds for all it's worth. They might bring it back to consoles. I really think it's a bad idea. It's bombed in consoles. Or they might keep it on mobile and make it bigger on there and put more of their Sega brands. Maybe there's a Sonic Angry Birds that are coming. I don't know. They could possibly do that. But my guess as to why they bought Rovio is not just for Angry Birds. Of course, Angry Birds is a good property that still makes money. It's not making as much as it used to when it first came out, but it's making good money still. I think they want to grab more of a foothold in the mobile market, which is the exact other reason why Microsoft is going after Activision Blizzard. They want King, and they want to have a foothold on that mobile market as well. I think that is also the play here. I don't know, like I said, you have Angry Birds, you have the free-to-play Angry Birds, and people are playing it, and you get like a special currency if you watch an ad, and here's an ad for the new Sonic game. That might be it too. So yeah, there is a decent business plan, I would say, for this, but to buy it at a 20% premium is the thing that puzzles me. Sega has been wanting to take a lot of their brands and put it on mobile. They've done it for Sonic for years. They've put a lot of their classic games on there for mobile since the beginning. They're trying to put Persona on there as well. I know that the Persona 5 game is coming to mobile pretty soon. Not the Persona 5 game, but a Persona 5 game. Don't get too excited. I don't really understand why they bought a brand that is distressed at this point. Maybe distressed is a strong word. It is going down though. And on a $1 billion evaluation in 2017, it's only gotten $600 million in revenue since 2021 for its one game. You could have gotten that, I would say, $675 million, I would say. Maybe $700 million. See, I'm a little curious as to why they paid the premium that they did. Hey, maybe Rovio has a greater negotiator. This has a lot to do with Angry Birds, but I think they want a bigger stranglehold on the mobile market, which is why they're doing this. Okay, next story. Sony acquired Firewalk Studios, and they're working on an unannounced multiplayer IP. Firewalk is a studio that was made in conjunction with the Probably Monster studio, and they haven't made a game. This studio has not made a game yet, but apparently they are working with Sony on a new multiplayer IP, and they've been working on it for a while, and I guess Sony has decided that now is a great time for them to just go out and purchase the studio so they can work in-house, which may not be such a bad idea, especially since Sony needs help on the live service multiplayer market. And again, this might be also a purchase that could help them on the getting a foothold in getting a different type of compete with Call of Duty. So at this point, I think it's interesting. There's not much more to say on this story specifically, but it's interesting. I think it would be it's a good idea for Sony to acquire more studios at this one, especially since they're going to have to start competing with Call of Duty in about 10 years. On to the next story. Pokemon Go studio Niantic is making a Monster Hunter Now mobile game. Good lord, that's big, okay? They made this announcement in the hopes that it will get some hype going to it. It is releasing in September. Oh my god, that's big. Pokemon Go is also one of the biggest mobile games of all time. To marry this with Monster Hunter, I think will be very big in this one. With Niantic doing a Monster Hunter game, that's going to be big news on there. And they've tried other games too. I think they tried a Harry Potter game and some other games that just have not clicked. I think they also did Pikmin Bloom, right? And that's not really done big either. They really need another hit, and this might be the hit they need. They will probably show off more stuff. You know what? If Capcom has a big thing in June, I wouldn't be surprised if they show this off in June, and that might be a big deal. Just with the brand alone, and from the creators of Pokemon Go, that could be huge. But then you would have to see if the game works and how good it is. So we'll see at that point. I think this is not a bad idea. This is a great idea, and I think this could be huge sales-wise if the game turns out well. Monster Hunter as a brand has gotten huge since Monster Hunter World. It is Capcom's biggest property now. So not surprised that they did this. I was expecting more of a free-to-play gotcha kind of game, almost, but, well, we don't know if that's what this is going to be, to be fair. With this, specifically, this could be huge. This will definitely be big in Japan. This could also have a sizable amount of people playing in the States. So we'll see how that turns out on that one. I am looking forward to seeing what this turns out to be. And finally, the last story of last week that was big from last week is Halo veteran Joseph Staten joins Netflix to make a AAA video game studio. Or a AAA video game, I should say. I don't think he's making a studio, but he's helping make a AAA video game. Joseph Staten was working on Halo Infinite. A lot of people are leaving Microsoft after the whole debacle of Halo Infinite. Rumors are right now that they are probably going to refresh Halo Infinite into Unreal Engine 5. So that's already becoming a mess. And Joseph Staten has been working on Halo on and off for about 20 years, I think. It's been a while. So he might want to just move on at this point and do something new. And he's got enough credibility where I wouldn't be surprised if he is running his own studio here. But for someone like that to then turn around and say, I'm going to go work at Netflix, I mean, that's interesting. Some are reporting or thinking that this means that Netflix is, because they say multi-platform on this, but that Netflix is wanting to go into the gaming space and to release games on Xbox One, Xbox Series X, PS5, Switch, et al. For this big game. That might be what's going on, but I think what's really going on is that they are developing technology in the background. Because if you have a Netflix account right now, you can play games if you have a tablet. And on your tablet, you go to Netflix, you play games, you can play something like, what was that? There's one really good game on there that I would have bought. God, what was it? Oh no. It's that mech strategy game. I'm gonna get pissed when I realize what the game was. But there's one game I really want, but it was a Netflix exclusive, so you can only get it if you have a subscription to Netflix. I think that's what they're going to do here too. That, yes, you can download that game onto your console, but you need a Netflix subscription in order to play it. I think that's what's going on here. So if you download on Xbox and on PlayStation bubbity-bubbity-bubbity-bub the game from Netflix, in order to play bubbity-bubbity-bubbity-bub, you're going to need a Netflix account in order to do it. And the Netflix account has to be current for you to play it. I think that's what they're going for here, which for Netflix might not be such a bad idea if they're getting into video games in this sense. I think right now, developing games and releasing in other systems, I don't think is going to be that great of an idea, because they would have to, that's risky too, because then they would have to get a hit right away. And if they don't, all that money they spent on making that studio and doing that will shut down after the first one bombs. You don't need that. I think at this point, what they're going to do is they're going to continue this subscription-based model where if you want to play the games that we have, you need to have a Netflix account. And this is going to be the same with this game, but they're going to make it a AAA game, as they say, quote-unquote. So we will see what that looks like. I might be wrong, but I think as in the business sense, it might be a better idea for them to do that than to have it release at $70 on the consoles and it bomb, and then they have egg all over the face. I think that might be what they're doing here. We will see. We will see on that one, but we'll hear more. I would say in the next couple of years, you're not going to see much more on that. Well, that is it for the roundup from last week. That was from the 16th to the 22nd of April. Thank you again for your understanding for me not being able to do the podcast last week. I hated I couldn't have done it, but unfortunately I was pretty tied up with things that were going on. I will try to make more of an effort if I think I'm not going to be able to do something to give you more of a heads up instead of just leaving you guys out in the lurch and wondering what the hell happened. Again, I apologize for that, but we will, hopefully that won't happen again, and I can just do what I need to do. Well, that is it for this episode of Capital Games. Tune in next time where I talk about new games that are coming out next week and the stories that are coming out as well throughout the gaming industry. I am The Wiz. This is Capital Games. Talk to you next time. Bye.